Hello, welcome to Fast Books. In this video, we are going to continue reading the first book of the Wheel of Time series. Let's get started with part 4. Chapter 22, A Path Chosen. Baron wakes up from a dream of home and working at Master Lewin's forge. He discovers that he slept under a tree. In a panic, he grabs his axe as last night's events replay in his mind. Baron reflects that he needs to do one thing at a time and the most important first, since that is his way. He goes over all of the tools he has and has lost in the escape from the Trollocs. He decides to head downriver because of Egwene's swimming ability, which would take her longer to cross the river getting pulled down the current. He searches downriver, jumping behind sparse trees in case shadows spot him and overcome their fear of water. He finds a hoof print with Master Lewin's characteristic double crossbar. A small trail leads him to a dense stand of trees and travels through them with a smile. He soon finds Egwene ready to attack him. He calms her and tells her he should have said he was coming. Egwene immediately takes charge of the situation by telling him to dry his clothes by the fire and feeding him. Egwene tells how she got away from the Trollocs by Bela nearly pulling her away. They both sit near the fire and talk of the others they haven't seen, arguing about the intervention of Moiraine in their lives. Baron talks of how the others could be all dead but decides to hope. Egwene asks what they should do and Perrin is shocked that she didn't decide for them. Drawing in the dirt the locations of the two cities and their current location, Perrin decides that they should go cross-country straight to Kemlyn instead of going to Whitebridge. Perrin decides once they get to Kemlyn they will wait a couple of days before moving on to Tar Valon and talk to the Amiralin seat directly. They decide to leave then instead of waiting for Perrin to dry, even with Egwene protesting. Chapter 23, Wolfbrother. Perrin Bara and Egwene Alvir are beginning their journey to Kemlyn. Both argue about who should be allowed to ride Bela, Perrin feeling that Egwene should be the sole rider, and Egwene believing that they should trade off. Finally, Perrin agrees that they shall take turns, but insists with an iron will that Egwene be the first to ride, suddenly threatening to put her in the saddle if she continues to argue. Though they continue to switch places at frequent intervals, Perrin is never really very comfortable in the saddle of diminutive Bela. The first day of their travel, Perrin tries a little hunting with sling and snare. When he returns to the camp, which Egwene has remained behind to set up, he finds Egwene having set the wood for a fire but is sitting before it with her eyes closed. Perrin is walking and Egwene riding when they detect smoke and the smells associated with cooking. Feeling unsure of his ability to use it, Perrin arms himself with his axe. The man offers to feed Perrin and Egwene, admitting that he hasn't seen them eat in a couple of days. After he gets over his surprise at being tailed for the last several days, and then his anger for the slight insult, his hunger persuades him to ignore the sharp words of the stranger and he calls Egwene to join them. Perrin introduces himself, and the strange man reciprocates with the name Elias Makira. Perrin shakes his hands and then notices with some startlement that the man's eyes are golden. Egwene admits that they are going to Kemlyn, at which Elias bursts out into raucous laughter. Egwene primly informs them that they were going to ask directions, and Elias, still laughing though much more gently, informs them that there's no one to ask all the way to the spine of the world. Perrin, disturbed by the man's mirth, muses that they may be eating with a madman. Egwene waits for Elias to stop laughing and politely asks the man to show them the way. Elias orders Perrin to make Bela be quiet, informing him that the newcomers will not hurt Bela, or them for that matter, if they do not move. 4 wolves walk into the clearing, and Perrin can see many more pairs in the darkness. Perrin reaches for his axe, but Elias warns him not to do that. The 4 wolves are staring at Perrin and he gets the feeling that all the wolves are copying them. Egwene asks if they are tame and Elias answers sarcastically that wolves don't tame. After Egwene dismisses the possibility of conversation, Elias briefly explains that it is not really conversation but the exchange of feeling. Perrin notes that for all his gruffness, Elias seems pleased to be talking to 2 humans. He asks Elias how he learned to talk to wolves. He says that every wolf remembers the history of all wolves, or at least the shape of history, and wolves remember a day when they hunted with men. Egwene finds the concept intriguing and asks Elias to teach them how to talk to them, and he tells her that it can't be taught. Then he drops a bombshell by revealing that the wolves say that Perrin can talk to them. Perrin is convinced by this that Elias is mad. Egwene begins telling their practiced cover story, telling the strange man that they are from Saldia. Elias denounces it for a lie, saying that Dapple, one of the wolves, says so. After a feeble protest and a stray action by Perrin, he reaches for his axe, which causes all 4 wolves to rise up. Egwene offers to leave Elias' cozy camp since he considers them liars. When Egwene was telling her story, the wolves could smell them in the story. He strongly advises them to tell the truth because some of the wolves think they might make a tasty dinner, also expressing the hope that they are not dark friends because he hates killing people after feeding them. It is at this point that Perrin realizes that Elias' eyes are wolf's eyes. Egwene looks at Perrin as if she wanted him to make the decision. Perrin decides to come clean and starts the tale back in Emond's Field. When Matrim Cawthon saw the man with the black coat, Perrin asks if talking to wolves is a manifestation of the One Power, and Elias says no, that it is an old thing, old as humankind. Perrin admits a disinclination to trust Aes Sedai as well, a comment which Egwene does not like. Elias looks like he is having a conversation with the wolves, a conversation that Perrin thinks he can almost hear. In his own head he denies that he can talk to wolves, and one of the 4 surrounding Elias looks directly at him and grins. Perrin realizes that it is Hopper and wonders how he knew that wolf's name is Hopper. Elias offers to let them stay with him and his wolves, saying that it would be very safe. Perrin admits to some doubt as to the wisdom of such a move since more than Trollocs are after them. The wolves will accept Perrin because he can talk to wolves and will accept Egwene because she is with him. Perrin protests that he cannot talk to wolves. Perrin protests more strongly, but is interrupted by Egwene, who states flatly that they are going to Kimlin, and then on to Tar Valon. Perrin, taken aback that she spoke for him, chides her for it, but he agrees with her that he is continuing on to Kimlin. Elias says that is what the wolf he calls Dapple said they would say, also remarking that Egwene is firmly planted in the human world while Perrin is planted halfway between. Suddenly the wolves stand and there is a confrontation between the one called Dapple and the one called Burn. Chapter 24, Flight Down the Arinelle. Rand is moving through the streets of a maze, a dank, murky maze smelling of the grave. Rand notices that his eyes glow like 2 red furnaces and recognizes him for Balzaman. He wonders about Mat Cawthon briefly and worries for him. The man asks Rand how long he expects to be able to evade him and once again claims that Rand is his. Distressed, Rand mutters twice, "Light, help me," fumbling for a sword that is not there. Rand suddenly realizes that he is dreaming. Rand awakens. Captain Daman is very demanding, driving his crew mercilessly to get away from the place where the craft was attacked by Trollocs. Rand notices that this works in a cycle. He also notices that Tom Merrilin stays away from them when they are grumbling. But he also notices that Tom watches them very carefully whatever he is doing. Rand remembers that Gelb is constantly blaming the night's events on them, going so far as to say that they are in league with the Trollocs. He pleads and whines to his crew, but whenever he looks at Rand or his companions, his eyes flash murderous fire. Rand mentions to Mat that he thinks Gelb cannot be trusted, and Mat responds with the question, can any of them be trusted? The Gleeman does his share of diffusing the tension by telling stories and singing for the crew, and to make the story that Rand and Mat are apprentice Gleeman stick, he gives them lessons every day, teaching them some of the easier stories. Tumbling and juggling. Rand spends most of the day at the railing scanning the shore for Egwene or Perrin, and seeing some wondrous sights as well. Rand spies a reflection in the distance, and Captain Daman tells Rand that it is a never-rusting metal tower, used as a landmark, and telling him that they are 10 days away from Whitebridge. Mat opines that there is treasure inside. Captain Daman agrees that it might be so, but he then tells of a stone hand 50 feet high sticking out of a hill and clutching a crystal sphere on Tremalking, a sea folk island. Daman is sure that there is treasure there, but the sea folk will not allow digging, and all they care about is their sailing, and they're looking for their Kuramor, the sea folk chosen one. Matt says that he would dig for the treasure, and Captain Daman responds that treasure is not the reason for seeing the world, but the strangeness that one encounters, and then regales the two with sights that he has seen, including the Panarch's palace in Tanchico, where animals that do not exist can be seen in friezes. Rand retorts that any child can draw a made-up animal. Rand admits to collecting bones in the hills when he was a child, but thought it might be bad luck. He doubts that Rand will ever go home. Rand protests violently and says that he will go home someday, when all of this is over and done with, and raise sheep like his father. He pleads for Matt's support, who gives it out loud, but then mutters that Daman probably doesn't want anyone else going after the treasure. 4 days into the trip finds Rand at the top of the mast, his legs wrapped in the stays, enjoying himself as the boat rocks gently in the river. Rand asks when he came up to join him. Rand then notices that everyone except Matt is looking at him, including the captain, who is obviously furious. Rand offers to come down with him, and Tom thanks him vigorously. Rand then acrobats down from his perch to scattered applause, landing close to where Matt sits. Rand notices that Matt clutches a curved dagger with gold sheath and big red ruby capping the hilt, which he hides from everyone else with his body. He is fingering it until he sees Rand, after which he hides the dagger. Rand asks him where he got it. When Matt does not answer, he gets a little tougher, and asks if he got it from Shadar Logoth. Matt blames it on Rand and Perrin, but says it's okay because he took it. Mordeth did not give it to him, so according to Moiraine, it must be alright. He then asks Rand not to tell anyone lest they try to steal it from him. Rand agrees, though he says that he thinks Master Daman is honest, but he doesn't know about anyone else. Matt pleads that they are the only two left from Emond's Field and can't afford to trust anyone else. Rand replies that he believes Egwene and Perrin are alive. After a moment, Matt agrees. Rand then asks if Matt has had any more dreams. Matt replies, maybe. Rand gets a little upset and demands that Matt be more specific. Matt replies that he has and doesn't want to talk about it. Just about then Tom shows up and tells Rand that he convinced the captain that Rand was training when he pulled his acrobatic stunt. It suddenly occurs to Rand what he had been doing and he sits down at the sheer mental shock of realizing his foolishness, while Tom remarks that they might be able to use his talents on the tightrope or slipwire in Ilion or Tyr. Rand carefully reminds Tom that they are going to Tar Valon. Tom reminds him that things may change and then pulls out balls in preparation for making Rand and Matt practice the triple crossover. Chapter 25, The Traveling People. Perrin and Egwene continue on their way to Kimlin, accompanied by Elias Makira, Dapple, Hopper and Wind. The chapter flashes back to that first morning of their uneasy partnership where Elias tells Perrin that the wolves are around, close enough to help if needed, but far enough away to avoid trouble. Egwene tries to make them all take their turn on Bila, and while Perrin does not argue, Elias tells her firmly, no, and then intimidates her into accepting his decision. They travel south and east for 3 days, Elias allowing for little rest except at twilight. The wolves bring them squirrels and rabbits to eat every night and Elias points out edible plants during the day's march. Elias also hunts while they travel. Though his company has ensured that they eat well, Perrin prefers a bit of hunger to the constant reminder of his newfound relationship with the wolves. Bila almost unseats Egwene, and Perrin prepares to sling the dogs when Elias tells him to stop. Then Elias mentions that there will be Tuatha and there, calling them the traveling people and Tinkers. Perrin admits to a desire to see Tinkers, but Egwene fears that if they visit the Tinkers, Bila might be stolen. Elias dryly scorns Egwene's words, saying that, though he's not always happy with them, Tinkers steal no more than most folks, and a good deal less than some. Perrin urges Elias to camp with the Tinkers and he finally agrees after warning them not to put too much stock into what the Tinkers say, and reminds them that the Tinkers can be formal. Elias replies ritually that they do not know the song, addressing the man as Mahdi. After being questioned, Elias assured the man, whom he calls Ren, that the wolves will stay away and not harass the band. Elias explains that Tinkers are looking for the song, and if they can find it, paradise will return. They approach Ren's wagon and Ela, his wife, greets Baron and Egwene warmly, but Elias gets a cool, distant welcome from Ren's wife. Ela reminds Baron of Mistress Alvir back at home. They sit on fallen logs, though Elias chooses to lay on the ground. Baron is dismayed to see Egwene eating it up. In an attempt to disrupt Aram's charms, Baron comments on the mastiffs. Elias finally crossly remonstrates with Ren for attempting to convert Baron and Egwene. He then reminds Elias that the Tinkers do not attempt to convert, they simply share. Elias says to try that line of reasoning on a parent who has lost a child to the Tinkers. Baron defends his own point of view, which is simple: hit back but otherwise let be. Aram takes the opportunity to criticize Baron, who criticizes right back. Before they can take off, Ela tells Aram that dinner is ready, but Aram says that both of them will eat with his mother and they both happily run off. Baron stands up to make a scene, then thinks better of it and apologizes to Ren and Ela. Ela refuses the apology, naming Aram as the guilty party, while Ren observes that Aram is a troubled man who may not be suited to the way of the leaf. Baron asks what happens to a tinker who cannot live the life of a tinker. They finish dinner, and Ren and Elias pull out pipes and fill them with tabac. We learn that Elias camped with the Tinkers last spring. In the telling we learn that some people can cross into the waste unmolested, like Tinkers and honest peddlers and once upon a time, merchants from Carhian. We learn that the Aelmen avoid the Tinkers and don't let the Tinkers approach them. Ela volunteers that they were young women, and Elias responds to Baron's surprise to inform him that Ael women may join the Maidens of the Spear, or Far Darasmai, as an alternative to becoming wives. Ren returns to the story and tells us that all of this group, save one, were dead, and she overcame her aversion to the Tinkers to deliver a message. Elias expresses great surprise to this, saying that Dralics do not like the waste, calling it Jevikshar, the killing ground. Ren continues with the story by relaying the dying woman's message, verbatim: Leaf Blighter means to blind the eye of the world, lost one. Ren informs Baron that Leaf Blighter and Sightburner are Ael names for the Dark One. Elias adds that he doesn't understand the message, and Ren says that he shares it with Elias because he is a friend, and has a different point of view because of his ... He breaks off when Elias motions him to do so, and ends the statement with ambiguity. Baron tries to puzzle out the message, recognizing the term eye of the world from his dreams, but gets nowhere. He also wonders what Ren was about to say when Elias cut him off. Baron replies that Aram reminds him of Will Alcine and she manages to keep him from charming her. He apologizes and suddenly, Egwene throws her arms around Baron and weeps. Baron muses that Rand would know what to do in this situation. Baron muses that tomorrow will be time enough to think about the wolves again, but we are told he was wrong. Chapter 26, Whitebridge. Tom and Matt banter about the boys playing. Tom asks Rand what they will do if they never meet back up with Moiraine and the rest, mentioning that they may be dead. Matt's statement shocks Rand and he debates internally his reaction to Matt's pessimism while outwardly he is staring at Matt. Tom remarks that it is a remnant from the Age of Legends. After marveling some more about the bridge, Rand observes to Tom that they made it to Whitebridge and without a mutiny, which earns him a dirty look from some of the crew. Tom tells them to gather their things, and while doing so, Rand wonders if they will ever see home again. Tom agrees that it is possible, then warns both of them to keep an eye out for Gelb because he may cause trouble. Captain Daman intercepts them at the head of the gangplank and tries to talk them into staying, but Tom graciously refuses, ultimately saying that they could not afford Daman's fare. Tom says that they might consider it if their friends aren't here in Whitebridge. Daman remains non-committal, and once again offers twice as much in the current purse if Tom will return before they leave on the morrow at first light. Tom hesitates, but Rand does not, heading down to the shore, the Gleeman following. The crowd notices Tom's coat and Rand muses so much for not being noticed. Even the carriage drivers notice Tom, but say nothing. He mentions that they should look for Moiraine right away, and that Tom should have changed his cloak. Tom stops dead and states that they can ask an innkeeper. He takes the lead, stepping quickly so that Rand and Matt have to hurry to keep up. Tom leads them to the Wayfarer's Rest, an inn situated on the town square. Tom orders spiced wine from the balding, fat innkeeper, and then asks for a private room. Then he notices that Tom is a gleeman and asks him if he is staying because he sure could use a gleeman. Tom answers non-committally, and repeats his request for privacy. Tom sets them in the center of the half-room to ensure they know when someone is listening, and then grumbles about the innkeeper's lack of honesty toward a gleeman. Rand notes the place is filthy and reminds Tom that they are there only for information. Matt demands to know why Tom chose this inn. Tom replies that the road leads to Kimlin straight from the bridge through this square. The innkeeper brings their drinks and promises that if Tom sticks around he won't have to pay for his drinks. Tom promises to think on it and then asks for news. Tom mentions that he would like to see it, because it would be worth a story that would be told for 1,000 years. After questioning from Tom, Bartim disparages the hunt and the man who announced it, who also announced that Tarmangadan was on its way. Tom recites a passage about the Horn of Valir that seems to indicate it is meant to be sounded to call back the dead. Bartim gets excited and says Tom has the right story, and if he tells that one in his inn, he'll have people hanging off of the rafters. Because Tom seems distracted, Rand asks Bartim if he has seen any strangers from the west. Tom takes control of the conversation again, saying that it was 2 men and 3 women and giving thumbnail verbal sketches of the missing. Bartim stands and withdraws his offer of letting Tom perform and advises the party to leave Whitebridge. Tom fishes for a reason for the change in the innkeeper's attitude. Rand asks if Bartim is sure the descriptions match, and Bartim says he is fairly sure about the fighting man and woman in silk, but that the man wasn't that interested in those 2. He really wanted to find 3 country lads, and then he eyes Rand and Matt. Tom muses out loud that he would remember someone like that. Tom protests that it's not him. Bartim acknowledges Tom but tells him what he told the Myrddrail. He doesn't know anyone by those descriptions. Then he slaps Tom's money back down on the table and bids them drink up and leave. Tom recommends hopping back onto the spray and heading toward Ilion since the hunt for them will center on the road to Kimlin. Tom gets angry and tries to reason, if angrily, with Rand, but Rand keeps saying no. Tom continues to attempt to persuade Rand and Rand gets stubborn. Tom blurts out that dreams can't hurt him, and Rand remains silent. Tom turns to Matt and asks for his support. Tom angrily answers him with indisputable points about his ignorance regarding Myrddrail and Aes Sedai and then demands Matt to tell him to go if they aren't true. He informs Matt and Tom while the conversation continues in the other room with one man dismissing Trollocs as long since vanquished. Rand wonders how long before Gelb describes Tom, Matt, and himself. Matt opines that the boat sounds good, but Tom says not anymore. Tom explains that it's just in case they get separated. Rand protests that he thought Tom was going to stay with him, and Tom insists that he is going to stay with them, and that this is just in case. He then tweaks Matt by saying I hope you no longer mind me staying with you, to which Matt replies that for some reason he's always on edge these days and then asks what they are going to do. Tom slows them down until they can check things out. Matt demands to know why Tom is helping them. Tom tells them that he had a nephew named Owen who got into trouble with the Aes Sedai and he wasn't around to help him because he was too busy with other things. 2 years later Owen died and Tom blames it on the Aes Sedai. There are tears in Tom's eyes when he says, "If I can keep you two free from Tar Valon then maybe I can stop thinking about Owen." He has left his cased instruments on a bedroll with Matt and Rand. Matt observes that Tom will not leave his instruments, and asks Rand if he believes Tom's story. Matt asks what Rand thinks the Aes Sedai did to Owen. Rand says he doesn't know but admits to himself that there's only one kind of trouble for a man to get into with Aes Sedai, but both agree that they are not having that kind of trouble. They nervously wait for Tom to return. A tall man with his hood pulled up stumbles into the alley, alarming both until they can hardly stand it, but they finally determine that it is only Tom. Tom makes light of it, suggesting that if he had them fooled, then it ought to be good enough for the gates. Tom now wears a brown cloak, and he puts all his belongings into it. The boys do not quickly recover from his startling appearance, and Tom snaps at them. Tom reminds them not to look in his face. Tom mutters something, but all Rand can catch is the name Owen. Tom thrusts his instruments into Rand's hands and orders the boys to run when he says so, and tells them not to stop until they get to the Queen's blessing, an inn in Kimlin. Rand protests that he doesn't understand, but Tom just commands him to run. As the boys retreat, Tom heads toward the mired rail, flourishing knives. Tom crashes into him before he can finish drawing it. Tom shouts one more time for the boys to run. An eye-searing blue flash fills the square and Tom starts screaming, but one last time shouts for Rand and Mat to run. As Rand approaches the gates, he remembers the remarks Tom had made about his height and stoops a little, but he needn't worry. They look at Rand and Mat, but there are so many fleeing that they do nothing. Rand thinks despairingly of Tom as he passes through the gates. Mat urges him to get up, but Rand just repeats Tom's name. Rand reminds Mat that he thinks Moiraine and Egwene and the rest are dead, but if that were so, why would the Fade still be searching for them? Mat admits that they may be alive, but he still encourages Rand to get up, lest they earn the same fate as Tom. Rand acknowledges the truth of that and, half expecting, hoping that Tom would come strolling down the road from Whitebridge, stands. He slings Tom's bundle onto his back. Thanks for watching part 4, click here for part 5. For more fantasy book videos, don't forget to leave a like, write down a comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.